welcome back. A slight change to the programme. First of all, the panel would like to recall Tun Kin because they have a question relating to the Kofi Annan Commission. So that should be a very brief thing, but if you could come up in a moment, Tun Kin. Then we'll move on to our colleagues from Rohingya blogger Uba Sen and Dor Kin La. And then we have a documentary which isn't scheduled, but I think everybody has agreed that it would be good to see. It's a documentary by independent filmmaker Shafur Rahman called Rohingya Testimony, No Reason to Hide Our Faces. So we will have that then before going back to the order of the agenda, of the timetable. So Tun Kin.
No, yes, we spoke about the possibility of having an answer to that question I raised earlier about the commission that Kofi Annan is he the president of it, a member of it, and what consequences that might have for us in PPT in the follow-up to this preliminary session.
Firstly, when we look at Kofi Annan Commission, it is founded by Aung San Suu Kyi's government, NLD, current government, and we have seen that they will not investigate human rights abuses. They will be looking something for solution for the Rohingya. So our concern here is, first thing, if we talk about Kofi Annan Commission, we can see that as they are not human rights abuses investigating, the government, there is impunity going on. What's happening to Rohingyas in our current state? If you look at after 2016, October 9, mass rape, mass killings, and mass arrests is been taking place. We have seen many reports, and particularly we have seen that February UN reports, strong reports I've already mentioned, and that report actually also supported, which I have presented just now, the victims. It's been supported also to UN reports because young UN officers officers got testimonies from these victims who were fled from Burma to Bangladesh, and so this is an important point. The government cannot go on these abuses and these genocidal activities against Rohingya, which been going many decades, first thing. And if you look at what consequence on that point, so far we have seen this before Kofi Annan Commission founded, in July 29, 2016, there was a report from Human Rights Commission. There have some key recommendation points. They call in that Burmese government, Rohingyas and other minorities is maybe crime against humanity. Though the key recommendation they calling up to restore the citizenship rights, to lift up basic restriction of basic rights, particularly restriction of movement, marriage, education, and these things. As of now, what we have seen, the Burmese continuously, this Burmese government, or even NLD, there is no willingness to restore their right to stop this crime against humanity, against Rohingya. We have not seen so far. The other point, if they are honest, the Burmese government, they should have implemented some points from UN reports, which was released in 29 July 2016. So even Kofi Annan Commission is advisory commission. If they give some key recommendation points, I hope some points will be there, but the government willingness whether they will implement or not. This is a question mark here. So as far as what I think this is just what Daung San Suu Kyi said. She wants some time and a space. So this is just to show up to international community. They are doing something for Rohingya community. They are trying to deal this issue, to show up to ace international pressure. So I don't think any positive result will come up from Burmese government, even though Kofi Annan Commission will do some points, but there is no hope as far as what I think. Because if they are positive or they want to stop this crime against Rohingya, this atrocity crime against Rohingya, what's been going on many decades, they cannot stop anytime. But there is no willingness, there is no political leadership want to speak up in Burma on these atrocities against Rohingya. So I will stop this here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonkin.
Can I just add to Tonkin 2 points, if I may?
Okay, very quickly.
Yeah. For the commission, there is... Take a mic. Sorry. Just quickly, 2 notes. One is the member within the commission. There are some members which are questionable, who have pronounced their anti-Rohingya activities. The second thing, the commission itself is just a suggestion commission, so there isn't any implementation plan afterward. So the commission result, whatever it would be, it won't have any scope for further action. It's just an advisory action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was it quick?
That was quick from me. Thank you very much. And now I invite Uba Sen from Rohingya Blogger to deliver some testimony. Ubu Sen is originally from Mongdo in northern Rakhine State, where the most recent outbreak of violence has taken place.
Thank you. Honorable dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak here. I am Ubase. I was born in Butidong Township of Arkan State, Western Burma in 1952. My father was a civil servant, and I myself worked for the Ministry of Cooperative in my hometown until 1991. I now live as a Rohingya exile and a refugee in the United Kingdom. I will share with my first-hand eyewitness account of the first centrally organized large-scale attack against our Rohingya communities across Arkan or Rakhine State in 1978. The attack was widely and correctly understood to be ordered and orchestrated by the highest level of the leadership in the central government of ex-General Ne Win in Rangoon. It was launched as a part of immigration crackdown known as Nagami or King Dragon Operation. After the independence of Burma, Rohingya people were same as the ethnic groups in Burma, and they enjoyed the right of full citizenship. National registration card, NRC, were issued for the first time in 1952. All Rohingyas in Arkan State were holders of NRC card. But in 1974, additional remark was sealed on the NRC card, stating that holding this certificate should not be considered as a conclusive proof of as citizenship. In the same year, the government launched Sabe or Jasmine Operation. The operation was designed to seize the NRC card from the Rohingya people. Many thousands of Rohingya NRC cards of the Rohingya were confiscated without any legal notice. In the beginning of 1977, the Burmese regime initiated King Dragon Operation at the cost of $140 million, $20 million US. The official purpose was to update government's demographic database in Arkan or register all residents classified categorically as either Burmese citizen or foreigners. But in reality, The operation wasn't as it official was said to be. It turned out one central objective was to take away all documents and proof of citizen that were in the hands of Rohingya families. Consequently, virtually all Rohingyas were made illegal in our own towns and villages of birth. I saw with my own eyes teams of Burmese and Rakhine local authorities confiscating official ID cards from those who had them and arresting and taking away anyone with their handcuff, including young children who were not yet eligible for ID card. As a junior township level government staff, I traveled through many towns in Arkan state. I saw with my own eyes many unusual things at the various checkpoints. For instance, at the checkpoint, only Rohingyas, not other ethnic groups in Arkan or Rakhine state, were routinely questioned. Often we were both verbally and physically abused by Burmese and Rakhine officials, from private in the army to police officer to magistrate. Even when we were walking down the street, they would stop us and ask who we were, what our lumio or race was. Many Rohingyas who say they are Rohingya get beaten and slapped, abused by the security troop. I know this for the effect. Both local Rakhine and Burmese authorities would call us Rohingya by the derogatory terms Khoto or Kala, this meaning nigger. The operation started in Aikhyaf, the capital of Arkan, on the 8th February 1978. Some of 250 inter-government officials started in King Dragon operation in Aikhyaf. They were said to be dispatched from Rangoon, the then capital, and also a large number of the heavily armed force from Burma Army and Navy in Arkan state, as well as the Civil Administration Department. I also saw thousands of Rakhine members from the Burma Socialist Program Party roaming about alongside security and other officials. At the launch of this operation, these men entered the large Rohingya village in Aikhyaf or Sitwe, called Sakipara. My own relatives in Aikhyaf informed me that 1,734 Rohingyas were herded like animals onto the army trucks and taken to the Aikhyaf Central Jail in a single evening. In Aikhyaf alone, more than 5,000 Rohingyas, including elderly men and women, children, women, were detained without any reason, without a few days. I heard many first-hand stories of how Burmese army terrorized our Rohingya communities by want-on killing and rape and gang rape Rohingya women throughout the Rohingya pockets. The mixed group of Burmese officials and Rakhine locals were seen carrying out the destruction of mosques, business, and Rohingya homes, just like what they did more recently, June and October 2012. The people who got arrested were inhumanly tortured. Even elderly men and women, children were not spared. In my hometown, Butidong, here is what I saw. On 11 February, the Burma Navy brought the team to launch operation in Butidong and Mongdo Township, where a majority of Rohingya live. The team appeared in every wards and villages. Rohingya were rounded up. I saw with my own eyes this Dragon operation unit arrest Rohingyas, tied with hand with ropes, strung them along with rope like hearts of goods. My neighbor, school teacher, Umir Ahmad, and wife have national registration card, but their teenage children were arrested because they could not produce ID card. They were not old enough to apply for ID card. Most of the innocent detainees were kept in the open field under bright sun. Butidong police station and Butidong police station and jails were overflowing with the Rohingyas detainee. All men, women, and children were together in the field with no food and sanitation or toilet facilities. An immigration court was established inside the main police station in Budinong, Burmese and Rakhine authorities questioned the detainees. Neither nor witness were allowed any of the court hearing. With a few exceptions, detainees were given a long-term prison with hard labor. Subsequently, many of them were sent to the prison in Maundo, the Rohingya town close to Bangladesh, and Akiaf township. Large number of prisoners were crammed in the small cell. Many families preached in this inhuman and unhygienic jail cell. They were provided with extremely insufficient quantity of goods, no medical treatment, and many were died with various diseases, and reported many were tortured and dead. I am not only Rohingya eyewitness who lived through the King Dragon operation in 1978. There were many people in different towns, wards, and villages of also witnessed in torture, arrest, and inhumanity during the large-scale operation against Rohingya. So word spread among Rohingya's community, and people began panic run. Rohingya left their land, properties, house, their cattle, and virtually anything that was not movable, just tried to run for their life. I saw with my eyes Rohingya men with several bullet injuries who was being carried to our town hospital. Nobody could save him. He died before reaching the hospital. Using my civil ID card, I was able to snag into the hospital and took his picture as he laid in the mortuary. I saw with my own eyes that how they abused the people while so-called collecting the population data. They entered the house, asked the name and age, then started slapping and punching Rohingya without any reason. Many Rohingyas watched or heard story of how their mothers, sisters, wife were raped and gang raped by the Burmese authority and security unit. Panic-stricken, the people from the town of Brutidam fled through the Nachingdok Valley, then through the Chigambien in Mongno Township. Then they fled to the Bangladesh by crossing Naf River. I followed with them through the valley to observe the situation. I took picture of fleeing people. Unfortunately, my picture were lost forever some years later when the Rohingyas activist organization in Bangladesh, which I gave, was raided by Bangladeshi police, which confiscated everything in the office, including my picture. The 3-month-long Dragon operation drove out roughly about 200,000 Rohingya from the various pockets, including Akiaf, Maundo, and Budidong Township. After the King Dragon operation, the regime launched Hinta operation, or Scared Dark operation, in order to bring back the Rohingya from the Bangladesh. According to the government figures, about 170,000 Rohingyas returned in late 1979. Rohingya refugees were thus received through a dozen or so temporary screening camps along the Burmese-Bangladesh border. They were issued a certificate after verification their status documents, although the government labeled Rohingyas as illegal Bengali immigrants. On the certificate, the words Rohingya was written, the ethnic name Rohingya was clearly written in the certificate. Those were issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. However, this new certificate said Rohingya were citizen or national registration card holders anymore, in spite of the fact that they referred to their previous NRC numbers. None of the Rohingya who previously were NRC or citizen card holders were issued back their NRC card. In 1982, new citizenship law was enacted. The Rohingya became stateless according to their customized law. Again, in 1991 and 1992, post-socialist military regime led by the Somong and Tanshui launched another operation as a similar scale as the 1978 Dragon operation. Consequently, about 250,000 Rohingyas fled northern Arakan, unlike 1978. These Rohingya were never allowed to return to Burma. Starting from 1989, the military regime launched a program in a nation replaced the NRC card with national scrutiny card. All the Rohingyas in the Arakan were asked to submit the application. The application were officially submitted, but in 1992, all Rohingya in Arakan state were forced to hold temporary registration card, which is especially issuing for non-citizenship, instead of issuing them national security card. Even the NRC card from the government staff were confiscated, and they were forced to hold temporary registration card in late 1994. After forcing the Rohingya to hold temporary registration card more than 20 years, the government has confiscated them in early 2015. And today, new democratic government led by the Aung San Suu Kyi is forcing Rohingya to hold national verification card, NVC, which Rohingya do not want. The card itself is unlawful. Yet there are many operations against the Rohingya to hold this card. The government started blocking the roads, villages, arresting prominent figures from the villages. However, the majority of Rohingya are not going to accept this card, which will make them foreigners permanently. For the reason of the Rohingya will be suffering from new restriction imposed every day by the Aung San Suu Kyi-led government. In conclusion, we are citizen and ethnic community from Burma, but today are mislabeled by Burmese government as illegal Bengalis. The Burmese government began their official persecution of us, Rohingya, four decades ago. The Rohingya suffering did not begin in 2012, where Burma opened up the world, one of the most remaining economies to do business with. We experienced many waves of massacre before 2012. Unlike 2012, in the last year, October 9, after attacking 3 border guard police force by a group of Rohingya fighters, the government launched clearance operation. At least 1,000 Rohingya civilians were inhumanly killed. Many hundreds of young girls, women are raped. A few thousand houses were burned down by military and border guard police. We are ourselves as the sons and daughters of the northern Arakan, just like Buddhist Rakhine who make up 2/3 of Arakan's population. Our identity was ancestral. It is our responsibility to honor our foreparents by keeping our distinct identity as Rohingya. But we are facing similar situation just like Jews in Nazi Germany, which stripped German Jews of their nationality. Our suffering is not caused simply by sectarian or communal strife between us and Rakhine extremists. The Burmese military leadership 1970s have been centrally involved. They attempt to erase our ethnic identity and eradicate our literal present from our ancestral land. Please listen our cries. Please help end the persecution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions from the panel?
I'd like to ask you one question. Thank you so much. Just a small point. You said that the national verification card is unlawful.
Yeah.
I'd like you to say a little more about that. Why?
I am not lawyer, but I know the many articles I saw there is written everywhere in the internet or everywhere. In 1982 law, there is no verification card. There is no mention any verification card. This is making government for the bluffing to our Rohingya people to make something they are making.
I understand at one time a number of Rohingya lived in the Rangoon or Yangon area, and presumably other parts of Burma or Myanmar. Is that situation completely now changed? Is the entire population of Rohingya established only on that border area with Bangladesh?
Yeah, only border area.
So people were removed from Rangoon. When was that? Many
Not
years ago?
move. The government not allowed to move Rangoon. There is making like open prison in the northern Arkan area.
No, I understand, but if you go back 50, 100 years or so, I understand there was a population in Rangoon. Is that not correct?
There is only few. I think the very few population there. There's not much Rohingya there.
There are still some Rohingya in Rangoon.
Yeah, I just wonder, but in the past there was a bigger population. So this is a long process of driving people back into this one sort of western corner of the country.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think, can I add something on that point? Actually,
You better
what
get
you
that.
mentioned is the Rohingya population mostly living in western part of Burma. So what you mean after General Ne Win coup power, there is some Indians in Rangoon and other parts. So by doing some operation, he driven out many people. But some Rohingyas are still in Rangoon, but they cannot say they are Rohingya. So just for some reason they just live there. It is not actually their focus is mostly in northern Arkan state, where the largest Muslim population of Rohingya people, Muslim population of Burma are residing in western part of Burma. So that is the policy. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And now I'll call on Dorkin Lwa, who, thank you very much, who is also from Rohingya blogger and originally from Mongdor in northern Rakhine State. Thank you very much.
Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to speak here today. I am Dorkin Lwa, a Rohingya woman. I was born in Butidang Township of Arkan State in 1953. Until 2002, before departure as a refugee from Burma, I worked as a government middle school teacher. Educators and teachers are held in high social status in Burmese national culture. My parents were born in Arkan and were buried in the Arkan soil. My grandparents were born there. They live and work in all their lives, both under the British colonial rule and after Burma's independence in 1948. They too died as full and equal citizens of our country, Burma. In fact, my grandfather, named Hu Aduzalil, sent a letter to clarification as to his citizenship status as an indigenous Muslim or Arkan or Rakhine in 1949, 1 year after independence. The Ministry of Justice, TIA Thana, replied officially. The official letter was dated 18 December 1949. The step from the letter is, it is to inform you that, according to your affidavit, you need not apply for the citizenship certificate as you belong to one of the indigenous races of the Union of Burma, as defined to the Section 3.1 of the Union Citizenship 1948, Burma Act No. 66 of 1948. In the early 1950s, when the Burmese government introduced the national registration card, Rohingyas were issued this legal identification as a national of the country. We have absolutely no problem to obtain legal IDs. The then government of Burma, including the military leaders, both in the region and in the central administration in Rangoon, treated us the respect and appreciation as the one of the ethnic people of the new Burma. We enjoyed basic citizenship rights and official recognition as a distinct ethnic community well into early 1970s. We were broadcasting in our own mother tongue, Rohingya, on Burma Broadcasting Service, the only national radio station before television arrived in Burma, 3 times a week, starting in 1961, because we Rohingyas were 75 majority in the 3 towns near Bangladesh. We are administrators has separate district called Mayu. When I was young student, we Rohingya children had full access to schooling. We enjoyed full freedom of movement. We could move from one neighbor to another, from one village to another, from one town to another, and from one state to another within Burma. There was not even the idea, let alone a national policy, of severely restricting our marriage, child, and family size. But this all changed when General Ne Win, well known for his violent streak, as a person and xenophobia toward Christian, Muslim, European, Indian, Chinese, so on. He considered anyone look different, believe in different God, or talk different as a completely untrustworthy. Indeed, anyone deemed untrustworthy is perceived as a threat to nationality. One of the major General Ne Win government, with the push for anti-Rohingya Rakhine nationalists, was the passage of 1982 Citizenship Act. The Citizenship Act stripped us of our nationality status and erased our ethnic identity. After the racially motivated law came into effect in the fall of 1982, hundreds of thousands of Rohingyas who had held national registration IDs were issued temporary registration card or white card so-called. In early 2015, the Burmese government de-recognized the white cards and confiscated them, rendering the Rohingya people absolutely without any semblance or proof of their standing as a Burmese citizen and lawful resident in our country. Today, nearly 1 million of our fellow Rohingya people have absolutely no legal existence as a people. Thousands of my own fellow Rohingyas live in ghetto-like conditions where armed guards stand ready to shoot and abuse. My brother, who Shuelaphu was the chairman of Township Development and Peace Council in Shan State during the military government led by General Tan Shui, but he was fired from his job in 1995 just because he is a Muslim. Even as we are discriminated, some of my cousin and one of my sister are still civil servants. We were not discriminated much till 1978. But since after King Dragon operation, there were many restrictions for ordinary people. Sometimes civil servants were also discriminated and tortured. After enacted 1992 citizenship law, only civil servants could travel outside of Arakan state. But since 1992, the border security force has called Nasaka was in place, and many restrictions against Rohingya were imposed, such as birth, marriage, movement, health, and education. After disbanding Nasaka, the Burmese government has firm border guard police, and the restrictions are still in place, although today so-called the democratic government led by Aung San Suu Kyi is ruling the country. When I was young, there was peace between Rakhine and Rohingya communities. But since 2012, the two communities are separated. I didn't face any problem when I studied at school and university. But since 2012, Rohingya students cannot join the university anymore. And the Rohingya youth have no future at all. And they are not allowed to work any government offices. Even they do their own businesses, they are started, and finally many of them are taking risky journey to Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc. Being a Rohingya, at first I suffered at age 9. Even my father, who was a police officer and fought for Burma independence in Arakan region along with British troops in 1962, when the late dictator Ne Win confiscated all properties of the people. The authority didn't spare even his properties. I couldn't control my tears by seeing the tension of my father, even I was too young. As all saving properties were confiscated, we faced a lot of difficulties even for studying. In 1978, when the government launched King Dragon operation, I was one of the eyewitnesses. I saw how Rohingya people were threatened, extorted, tortured, and abused. I was pregnant at that time, and I saw from my window how the people were fleeing at night and how their properties, houses were burned down. I saw all these things with my own eyes. I was very much scared when I saw my neighbors. The teacher and his family were arrested by the military security troops. 3 years later, I faced another horrifying situation again. As the government made a long-term plan to wipe out all educated Rohingyas from the town, they arrested many educated without any reason. They targeted my husband too. He was a senior auditor with the Ministry of Cooperative. At midnight, about 12, the military surrounded our house and they took my husband away. They questioned him the whole night and released after extorting 300 kyats. The sum which we had to give was salary of both, as we had 3 children. We faced a lot of difficulties for that extortion. However, we got support from the parents who are making little money with their pension salaries. To escape further persecution, we had to move capital Rangoon because of the increasingly repressive treatment by the authorities. Many other educated, including many of my relatives, had to flee to the neighboring country, Bangladesh. The Rohingya people who couldn't escape are still suffering. After moving to Rangoon, even everything was fine. I was very much disappointed when I attended the refresher training, although the training was named refreshment training for the teachers. The special lecture was included that the Bengali people in Rakhine state made it up to 4 wives and have 20 to 30 children, and many others hatred against Rohingya people, for which I was very much worried that the situation in Arakan will become worse. As I thought today, the situation in Arakan is like the people are living an open-air prison. Since then, I started thinking to leave the country, as I could imagine the situation for Muslims will become the most worsened. In 2002, all of my family members reunited in one country, but unfortunately later, after 3 years, we had to separate again. Now we are in 3 different countries, UK, USA, and Germany. After I arrived the United Kingdom, 1 year later, the massacre took place in Arakan state, and my 2 cousin brothers were killed, and all of my relatives live in Situa, internally displaced now. Again, in late 2016, more than 1,000 Rohingyas were brutally killed, murdered, burned alive, and many hundreds of women and young girls were raped, and thousands of houses were burned to the ground by military security troops under the pretext counter-insurgency campaign. Today, we are still less in our own country. Even as for me, my grandfather had a certificate that he belonged to the indigenous race of Burma. Now I am recognized as a citizen. I am not recognized as a citizen. My father served for British Frontier Police Force since 1930 and led for Burma Police for more than 3 decades. I have graduated from Rangoon University, yet today I am accused as illegal Bengali immigrant. We have many evidence. We are long settled and native to Kingdom of Arakan. Yet our historical facts and evidence have been ignored by Burmese government since 1962. I urge the international community to stand up for us, the Rohingya, who have been subjected to what Professor Amartya Sen called a genocide. I want to say in conclusion, the government of Myanmar or Burma is instrumental in the worsening flight of the Rohingya. Burma's rulers since 1970s are fully responsible for the violence against and destruction of us, the Rohingya. We are not destroyed by the communal prejudice from Rakhine Buddhists. We are being destroyed by the central government policies, which including giving local ultra-racists a blanket impunity, as they attempt to harm us mentally and physically. Thank you for hearing our stories.
Thank you very much. If you could stay there a moment. Any questions from the panel?
Well, just to thank you very much for sharing with us your very painful experience over many, many years. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to move, as I mentioned, to a slightly changed departure in the timetable, and we're going to show a segment of a film by Shafiur Rahman, documentary filmmaker, and the film, the 10 minutes of extraction from the film, is from the Rohingya testimony, No Reason to Hide Our Faces. So thank you very much, and we will, if we could have the lights dimmed a little bit, please, that would be great. Thank you. Perfect.
While we were sleeping, it was 2 or 3 a.m. I did not notice that the military surrounded my whole house. They suddenly entered. They carried both rifles and knives. One used a knife to cut some rope in my house. My brother and sister-in-law's husbands had their hands tied behind their backs with the rope. They were first beaten with rifle butts. They were beaten so harshly that my brother was about to die. It was so horrible to watch. When they were beating my brother and my sister-in-law's husband, we were close to them. We were also lying down. Whenever they were crying, we were also crying. My oldest son and my 11-year-old daughter were beaten too. And then they shot and killed my brother and my brother-in-law. This happened just outside our house. When they were shooting, a bullet grazed my sister's skin too. Then they dragged their bodies away. We never found their bodies. I cannot tell you what I feel inside. The military was kicking us with their boots. My husband was lying down as if he was dead, spreading his hands wide.
पानी भात
I cannot tell you what I feel inside. The military was kicking us with their boots. My husband was lying down as if he was dead, spreading his hands wide. So this is the testimonial from a UN human rights report. This comes after the government of Myanmar has repeatedly denied that there's any abuses going on in Myanmar itself. In fact, the government of Aung San Suu Kyi had commissioned their own inquiry, which was led by a former Lieutenant General, and they reported back that there's no evidence of abuses whatsoever. So the UN Human Rights Commission sent a number of lead investigators to the camps in Bangladesh, where many of the Rohingya had actually fled. The rights abuses are evident in this report, and some of these hardened investigators actually said that this is the worst situation they've actually come across. You see mass scale of killing, rapes, murder, killing of children. Over half of the women that fled had been sexually abused, over 52% of them. So this is actually a testimonial to what's actually the reality of what's happening in Myanmar.
Please. Right. Thank you very much for that insight into the most recent violence in northern Rakhine State. We'll now move to the agenda as in front of you from 2:30 to 6:30. We now have Azril and some Malaysian lawyers who are going to present evidence that they have accumulated inside Malaysia from refugees fleeing Burma.
Thank you, Professor Penny Green. Respected panel of jurists, prosecution team, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. My name is Azril Muhammad Amin. I'm the Chief Executive of Center for Human Rights Research and Advocacy, Centra, based in Malaysia. And I have come along with 6 lawyers of my learned friends to share with the tribunal today some of the documentary evidence that we have gathered from the Rohingya community in Malaysia. My colleague, Rosal Azimin, will be sharing with you the recorded statements of this Rohingya community. Just as a background, perhaps I can read out a short speech on behalf of Centra. Ladies and gentlemen, crimes against humanity and constant as well as systematic violation of human rights against the Rohingya community is said to be continuing and never ending. However, the most violent of incidents is said to have happened in 2012, when the first wave of open violence and mass killings occurred in many Rohingya villages in the state of Rakhine, particularly in the townships of Mangdao and Arkang. Related crimes and brutal human rights violations continue to be committed against them until this very day. And approximately a year ago in 2016, a second wave of ruthless and savageness violence was again perpetrated against the same minority ethnic group in October. These two major atrocities have collectively attracted the world's attention, causing the international community to seriously reconsider Myanmar's standing in the world's community of nations, and condemnations as well as pressure to end the violence expressed in various international fora continue to dog the Burmese regime. The world can no longer turn a blind eye to these horrendous events. The international community, including many non-governmental as well as civil society organizations, regardless of nationality or origin, have taken cognizance of the many atrocities committed by the Burmese regime against the Rohingya and have started to condemn the blatant as well as obvious violations of human rights, crimes against humanity, and systematic genocide being perpetrated against this ethnic group. World bodies such as the United Nations Human Rights Council, the General Assembly, EU, the Organization of Islamic Conference have passed many resolutions to condemn the deteriorating situation of human rights in the state of Myanmar. Among the resolutions passed were number 1, resolution of 15 December 2016 by the European Parliament, number 2016-3027, resolution 2134 by the United Nations Human Rights Council in 2016, resolution of the extraordinary meeting convened by the OIC in January 2017 in Kuala Lumpur recently, and the General Assembly Resolution ARES 68242 in the year 2014. Many other reports regarding the human rights and humanitarian situation in Myanmar as regards the Rohingya have also been published. For example, the report of the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights Mission to Bangladesh, which published a flash report on 3rd February 2017, and we also wait for the report of the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation in Myanmar, due to be presented by Yang Lee before the Human Rights Council, and the same is scheduled to be presented this coming 13 March 2017 during the 34th Assembly of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. Nonetheless, until now, crimes and brutal human rights violations continue unabated, and no aggressive action has been undertaken to put a stop to the continuing violence. At least 19 civil society and NGOs and Rohingya associations around the world have taken the initiative to urge various people to convene their own permanent People's Tribunal and urge the setting up of an international tribunal to try acts of violence and violations of human rights against the minority Rohingya community. In Malaysia, 2 civil society organizations, Centra and the International Movement for a Just World, took the lead in the task of gathering all evidence, statements, and testimonies from the stateless victims of violence against the Rohingya who were compelled to leave their homes and forced to leave behind their land and families, floating for months in the open sea to seek asylum in Malaysia, among other countries. Since Malaysia is one of the many countries to have taken in Rohingya victims apart from Bangladesh and some other nations, we have undertaken the arduous task of identifying and gathering as much as possible evidence regarding any violations of human rights or any element of crimes against humanity committed against the Rohingya minority. In pursuance of the above, Centra has formed a legal team consisting of 10 senior lawyers and licensed to practice law in Malaysia, and has tasked them with interviewing and gathering as many testimonies as possible for Rohingya refugees in Malaysia, and thereafter determining whether the minority Rohingya ethnic community have in fact had their rights violated or denied them, or have been ill-treated or brutally and inhumanly oppressed by the Buddhist majority, including military personnel and government authorities of the state of Myanmar. This legal team is an independent group and non-partisan. The legal team was formed with the purpose of providing expert witness testimony for the purpose of today's tribunal. And the primary objective for forming this legal team is to determine whether there have been any violations of human rights against the Rohingya minority in Myanmar, and whether there is any elements of crimes against humanity perpetrated by the state of Myanmar against this particular minority ethnic group. I will now invite my colleague, Mr. Rozal Azimin, to share with you the recorded witness statements that we have done in Kuala Lumpur. We have about 35 Rohingya witnesses that we have managed to interview, and in the original language of Rohingya, and also translated into Malay. Okay, okay, please. Good afternoon. Distinguished panel of jurists, members of prosecution team, steering committees, and ladies and gentlemen. I will continue on this presentation more to the aspect of our legal team collection of testimonies from the Rohingyas in Malaysia. I think we have given a bundle of documents to the panel of jurists, and I think the presentation script is also there in page 4, 2.5. Right. The task is not easy. Currently, there are about 56,000 Rohingya refugees scattered around throughout the 9 states of Malaysia. The legal team managed to identify about 10 to 15 Rohingya refugee settlements in Klang Valley area, particularly within the vicinity of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and managed to interview up to 100 refugees or victims for the past 3 months, starting from January. Our target group of witnesses are Rohingyas, refugees or victims who have personally experienced and have eyewitnessed the events surrounding the violence committed in Myanmar in the year 2012 and later. Before the commencement of the audio-visual interview, the legal team undertook a preliminary assessment of the Rohingya refugees sought to be interviewed before accepting their testimonies for the purpose of the above stated assignment. Among the matters determined were: 1, that the interviewee would be an authentic member of the Rohingya community based on his or her state-issued documents, earlier testimonies, family trees record, as well as official confirmation from the head of the settlement they live in Malaysia for the purpose of interview. B, that the interviewee came to Malaysia after the violent incident of 2012 and not later, and not prior to that. C, that the interviewee came to Malaysia by force in order to escape ongoing violence and violation of human rights and not because of any other purpose. D, the interviewee testimonies are based on her or his own personal experience, not something that they felt, what they felt and what they have eyewitnessed, and not something they heard from others or any other hearsay evidence. The scale of undertaking of the legal team quickly became apparent when many of Rohingya refugees sought to the interviewed refused to give formal evidence out of fears that their family members still residing in Myanmar would be subject to a greater danger of being assaulted, beaten, murdered, should they be identified. Due to this constraint, out of almost 100 witnesses, the legal team decided to limit the compilation of testimonies and accounts to only 35 witnesses for the purpose of this tribunal. These testimonies were fully recorded in audiovisual form and translated into Malay language by the Myanmar interpreter. Then the testimonies were transcribed and further translated into English to ensure that those testimonies were given voluntarily without force or without any kind of inducement, as well as given without fear or favor. The interviewer and the interpreter then executed a statutory declaration to this effect and affirmed the same before the notary public. I think the copy of the statutory declaration is with the panel of jurists. Centra strongly believes that by the virtue of strict conditions and due process observed in taking of the testimonies, transcripts, audiovisual evidence of the same are fit to be used in any international court and will withstand at any level of scrutiny. Prior to the start of any interview, as a matter of due process and in order to observe necessary legalities, the witnesses were reminded to speak the truth and were also further reminded that they were under oath to speak the truth. The interpreter was also asked to take an oath before all interviews to ensure the necessary legalities and truthfulness of their interpretation were duly observed. Now,
For the type of violation, for the purpose of this tribunal, we have classified the testimonies of the witnesses to 4 types of violation. That is, number 1, violation of fundamental rights, B, violation of rights to property, C, violation against personal right, and 4, violation against right to live, right to life. Based on our findings, now we go to the violation of number 1, which is violation of fundamental rights. Based on our findings, all the Rohingya refugees has been denied citizenship. All Rohingya victims have been stateless since 1982, when they were not issued any identification document following the coming into force of the new Myanmar nationality and citizenship law in that year, 1982. They were also isolated from the wider Burmese range of communities and confined to only their own villages, and they were hindered from traveling outside their villages. They were also not allowed to receive any basic and formal education and were not welcome and unwanted by Burmese government schools. Further, they were also denied electricity and water supplies, living only by the light of gas lanterns, with water supplies being limited to what was available from wells. The following are the testimonies by witnesses recording evidence of the aforesaid. Now, the video recording with subtitle in English. However, this translation were made by ourselves, so I hope that the panel of juries will accept it on the face value. Can we start with Shabir Ahmad bin Saleh Ahmad? Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Kamu yang sudah baca apa-apa susah, ini ada air bagi rasur. Air pulang.
That's witness number 1. Number 2 is Hidayat bin Abdul. We can find that in page 4 to page 11 of our bundles of documents.
Indonesia dak Malaysia paraya bolen budu biara malta serba de tunale Indonesia ini nara khara le itara Indonesia mata sil Indonesia te am Malaysia se itara taru bikin lagi.
Right, we go to violation number 2, which is a violation of right to property. It is our finding that the Rohingya victims were expelled from their homes and villages. Many houses were also burnt and destroyed. They were forced to flee into the forest, and subsequently many had to leave the country. They were denied their rights to own houses and land. Their rights to the enjoyment of property have been violated on a massive scale. Now, we have 5 testimonies of witnesses in relation to this violation of rights. Number 1 is Jamila. This is we can see it in page 18 to 22 of the bundles panel of jury. Witness number 2, Muhammad Faris bin Hussein. Page 23 to 25 of the bundle. Number 3 is Abdul Munaf. We can see from page 29 to 32 of the bundle.
Apa yang berlaku di tempat kampus itu? Dia berada di situ. Apa yang berlaku dekat situ?
finally, কিছু প্রাণীগুলো কিছু জন্মাতে কিছু হালকা বাজি হিন্দা বাজি লামা লাগানো বাজি তারা মেডিটি ব্লাড দিয়ে বাজি থেকে কিছু নমুনা দেখুন দেখুন এটা কিছু কত মুন দি লগাই dia boleh boleh bagai para dalam lah ada orang dia para dalam macam dia nah dia boleh jadi boleh cakap dulu ni misalnya di para lah macam ya para lagi dia saya ada lah saya indra lah saya manusia indra saya dia dunia saya indra itu mana ये मानुष ही बात है पर किशोर किशोर क्या होता है सुना है जाने दे किशोर बात मेरे को ये वो किशोर बात ताज हो गई किशोर फांदे ने बात में कितना बुरी हो गई बात किशोर दवा भी मैं मान मुझे बात इंद्रा मेरे की बात इंद्रा भी ने बात लाने ने बात क्या कुछ है इंद्रा हम संबंधित जितना तो बुन खाली हुई और फिर बुन को ये वो इंद्रा खाली बात इंद्री या yang di Jakarta semua itu dari lamanya dari Golden bagian dari Purabara, Sakura, itu dia memang baru dulu dari yang sama lagi. Dia pun dari lagi, orang Malaysia, dari lain Golden, Muslim, ada negara kecil dulu ini juga. Sebab ada ini ada berapa lagi juga. Ada berapa juga, bagi Indra itu ada, Jafar Marai.
Yes, witness number 4 is Anayatullah Rashid Ahmad, which we can see in page 33 to 47 of the bundle.
Maksud ini orang Rohingya itu Islam, dia itu Buddhisme cakap ini saya punya negeri, ini saya punya negara. Tak boleh itu military punya cakap lah, military cakap. Ini orang Rohingya tak boleh duduk sini.
And lastly, number 5, Zahira Adam binti Sultan Ahmad, page 48 to 51 of the bundle. All right, we go to the third violation, that is violation against a personal right. We divided these two into two categories, that is physical assault, beating and forced disappearance, and the other one is rape and other form of sexual violence. Now, for these physical assault, beatings and forced disappearance, the victim complained that they were physically assaulted when they were expelled from their houses. They were also beaten inhumanly by the military and the majority citizens of Burmese Buddhist descent, and some of them were taken away by the military. Their whereabouts were unknown. Also, from the interviews, we were shown evidence of physical injuries, such as scars from stabbing and slashing. The victims also named some of their relatives whom were taken and disappeared. We have identified 3 significant witnesses in connection with these violations. Number 1 is Nurul Amin Muhammad Ali. You can see in page 52 and 53 of the bundle. Now, witness number 2 is Hidayat bin Abdul. Page 4 to 11. Witness number 3 is Muhammad Faris bin Hussein Ahmad. It's in page 23 to 25 of the bundle. Rape and other forms of sexual violence. Rape and sexual violence also occurred against the Rohingya in Myanmar. Some of the female victims were brutally raped and sexually assaulted. Some of them were subsequently murdered. The legal team did not identify any rape victim in Malaysia, but we did manage to identify 4 eyewitnesses of the forced violence. We have 4 witnesses for this, starting from Muhammad Faris bin Hussein Ahmad. You can see in page 23-25 of the bundle.
बहुत पूरा दिल्ली वाला है तो इसके पारा वाला लेकिन बहुत सारा मुसलमान वाला पूरा वाले का पूरा दिल्ली वाला है पीछे आने में अलग अलग होने वाले हाले न वाले एन एक दिन वाले होता है यार एमआईयू का की का आसरो था जो यार वो तस्वीर वाला आर वाले एक दिन वाला होता है मंदिर के गिरोह में जाए मंदिर माया मंदिर लोग माया मंदिर लोग बहुत माया मंदिर लोग माने जाते आर वाला तीन फुंगरों माया वाले जो फुंगरों माया वाले जगह वाले माया वाली नरे जुलूम वाले तो ही नरे जोगराई ने जियावाई वाले जो जलावाई वाले फुंगरों शुरू में बाहर मुरागी वाला हम करने तो मुरागी ने रे साइड में बेगिन अभी जोगराई ने माया में आर का जिले खास में आर का माया फुंगरों में आर कोई नहीं
Witness number 2, Muhammad Shakir Habibur Rahman. We can see in page 65 to 71 of the bundle. Witness number 3, Abu Talaha bin Abdul Shukur. Page 72 to 74 of the bundle.
Berkenaan dengan orang, dia buat tindas orang, dia buat apa-apa dengan orang kampung kat situ.
Mancara lagu itu dah. Mancara itu ada arah itu bukan gura-gura kain dia ya. Kain mana arah pura diwar tu ada tu gawal tu asyik kan rugi asyik. Tu biji washing tu time mana itu ada rakyat ada. Dah rati mana ada main mana tu isu tu kita lagi itu ada red gore. Pada dulu le jago ar di malu penjara masa dulu itu ada mundu guli malu.
And lastly, Jamila, page 18 to 22.
Sebelum saya ambil, saya tanya, ada tak perempuan perempuan
dia punya kampung dekat ada satu camp. Dia siapa yang nampak cantik dia tarik ikut dia meninggalkan itu matikan robot. Dia ada. Dekat ni kan?
And lastly, number 4 is violation against the right to life. From our finding as well, derived from the interviews and compilation of the testimonies, we note that the worst violations endured by the Rohingya were the killings and mass murder of their people. Apart from being denied of their rights to property and other fundamental rights, we are of the opinion that this inhuman violation of their right to live and ethnic cleansing are apparent. Rohingyas were killed brutally, merciless, and without any cause and or reason whatsoever. The brutal killings were not only against the adult males, but also against women and children. These intentional, systematic killings may also form and describe as genocide. We managed to gather first-hand evidence from 7 eyewitnesses who witnessed these atrocities being committed. First is Jamila, page 18 to 22.
Saya akan tanya soalan terakhir. Kamu terangkan apa lagi jahat orang ni bila pergi ke Myanmar, apa dia jahat yang kamu nampak?
जाते देखते रहे लास्ट कॉर्नर जो तुम्हारे मगदासे दिशा मारा करने मिलिट्री मारा करने लूटिंग मारा करने पंडित मारा को लगे पाती लूटिंग मारा को मिलिट्री देखने सामग्री में क्या क्या सामान इसकली बुआ ठीक है जहाँ
Buat apa?
किए नहीं करा तुम्हें ये
Ini ay mare rundi ke war kare
अंता बाका फोटो
na kale buli mare der
और आपा को ताबोले नामपा तंपा Apapun ada makanan dia tengok-tengok pergi kedai cari mana yang beli barang dia ada number dia tempat.
Yeah, as we said, we have 7 eyewitnesses for this purpose of tribunal, but we jump into number 7, Mariam binti Nur Ahmad. Page 94 to 96.
Oke, sampai ke kampung lama dia anak 3, dia suami sekali potong. Potong. Dia mak gini kan suami dia mati. Itu suami dengan dia anak 3 orang. Dia potong macam mana? Oh, dia lalu aja dia mana? Oh, anak-anak dia potong itu dia suami tembak. Suami tembak. Ya, anak potong itu anak potong dia lalu dia. Panjang pisau. Satu orang itu bisi, macam itu 3, itu lagi 2 orang potong anak, suami tembak kena. Potong macam mana? Di lalu dia pakai orang 2 orang jual. Oh, sedikit potong tengkuk lah. Panjang itu pisau. Oh, dia itu punya patah, suami yang gigi. Siapa yang tiba suami? Oh, dia kena pistol. Ibu itu ada laki seorang ada ayah dia pun potong.
Conclusion, our legal opinion and conclusion. From the interviews, investigation and our finding derived from witnesses in the above mentioned assignment, we are of the opinion that and conclude herewith with absolute certainty that there exists a very serious situation of violation of rights against the minority ethnic group of Rohingya in Myanmar. From the interviews conducted, we are also of the view that crimes against humanity were perpetrated against them, which is tantamount to a systematic ethnic cleansing or genocide. We strongly believe that the situation in Myanmar is very crucial and critical, which needs urgent attention and serious step needs to be undertaken in order to stop this inhuman violation of human rights and stop the brutality and barbarity. We are also of the opinion that the Rohingya have no access to justice whatsoever. The Burmese state is unable and unwilling to prosecute the perpetrators. With that being the case, urgent intervention by the international community at large is seriously needed. With that, I'll thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that powerful testimony. Could you just stay there a moment and we'll give the panel an opportunity to ask some questions.
Yes.
Daniel.
Thank you very much for your presentation of the whole team and the evidence you have gave to us. So some clarifications in it about some situations. So do you have any estimation about how many refugees are currently in Malaysia?
56,000.
56,000?
Yeah, Rohingya victims is 56,000.
Okay, then how do you know how many of them arrived after October 9th from the last attacks?
No, we can't determine that.
So they were coming during which period of time?
After the last atrocity, the most recent in October, there was none because most of them went to Bangladesh.
Ah, okay. So these interviews
we
were taken prior to the atrocities.
Yeah.
Okay, and all of the refugees in the camps are Rohingya people, or they are members of some other groups in Myanmar?
There is no camp. There is no camp. They live in villages.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they have their own settlements.
And all of them are Rohingya?
Yeah.
There are 100,000, estimation, there are 100,000 Myanmar refugees in Malaysia. This is according to the UNHCR numbers. But 56,000 are from among the Rohingyas. 56,000. These are in the process of being documented.
And what about the other groups, the other 40,000?
We have about 3,000 Kachins and other from other ethnic minorities.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of the ASEAN group. Indonesia is the largest Islamic state in the world. Indonesia, like yourselves in Malaysia, active members of the ASEAN group, Singapore, others. Is there any ASEAN device for reviewing a situation like this in a fellow member state? Is there any legal device for approaching a member state who's out of line with ASEAN standards or ASEAN law? Is there any facility for putting pressure?
We only have the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration
Right.
2012. That's it. There
But
is no legal mechanism for
to implement.
For recourse, yeah.
Is there ever going to be?
There have been proposals, but it's not moving forward.
It is particularly sad to see such a large Muslim community within the ASEAN group neglecting the plight of the Rohingya. It does make you want to weep, doesn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis.
Yes, I had a question. Thank you very much for this harrowing but very careful documentation, and with the legal apparatus with it, I think is very important. I wanted to ask about the statement that you said that you didn't interview any rape victims direct victims. And I'm wondering, did you have any women on your team, or were your investigators and interviewers all male?
Yeah, we have two female lawyers together with us, but it's because of the time constraint, we do not have any rape victims, or maybe perhaps they don't want to come forward. Perhaps, yes.
Because this was a voluntary exercise.
Yes. Well, I think that's typically it's not an issue that people are likely to raise at the first instance, and sometimes in our experiences in other places they may say, talking about they know of a situation or they have seen a situation, and it's not until they really gain the confidence that they might come forward and actually reveal that they themselves have suffered. So this is an issue that probably would need more longer term and confidence building work. The second point I have is just a very, very small technicality on translation. And I'm wondering, in one of the interviews, it said that they went into the forest and found skeleton. And I'm wondering, I didn't see back into the Malay word that was used for this skeleton, but it would seem to me that it's probably more likely to be a body, a corpse, unless it was some time afterwards.
Skeleton is tengkorak.
Yeah, but did they say tengkorak? Or
yeah,
mayat?
yeah.
No, because normally we wouldn't find a skeleton immediately in a immediate post conflict.
Which page is that?
I don't know. I just saw it from here, and I didn't go back to check whether it might have been perhaps mayat, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a small point, but yes, you don't need to address it now. But
It was Muhammad Faris bin Hussein Ahmad mentioned skeleton.
bones. They said bones. Okay, it just seems a little strange if it's in the immediate aftermath. Okay, thank you.
Just a suggestion regarding the question of the testimonies of rape, that one possibility that have been used in other cases, and it is enough reliable in terms of the ways of taking the testimonies, is just to give the possibility to do the testimony in a confidential way, so not to put neither the name nor the image of the people who are giving the testimony, but that you can guarantee as the reliability of your work, that testimony, so you can use the testimony without identifying the person, because it's not in this situation, it's quite common, the difficulty to take testimonies of rape directly from the victims. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that series of testimony that was very carefully put together. We appreciate it very much. We now move on to the final two in this particular session. The first is a video clip from Professor Michael Charney, which I think we have, do we?
Go to the tribunal site.
Oh, it's on the
They're just
tribunal
under,
site.
Amartya Sen's 11 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Zani.
I don't know if I'm online.
Oh, we may not be online.
You're not online, huh? Okay. Otherwise, I can use one. It's on.
Have you got it on a hard?
We went online on that computer, so you should be on.
Well, yeah, we won't. We're not at the moment.
No, I'm not. Mine was a file, but we did log on.
Yeah.
But it was very flaky.
Yeah, that's right. It's a difficult room.
Yeah, no, I don't have it set up for the internet, but I'll try. I'll try and do it. Where is it on the website?
Go to tribunal on Myanmar.org.
Well, why don't we start with you?
No, this was better.
Yeah, I just don't want to take too much time finding it. That's the problem. Oh, okay.
Let me try something.
Do you want me to hotspot or something? No, that's going to cost a fortune, isn't it? Can't we put? You haven't got a computer that we could put onto a hard drive.
Mine's a special adapter. Mine's really
So show me where it is on here.
I'm sorry, we're just trying to establish an internet connection.
This is the website.
Oh yeah, go to the homepage. There. Yeah. Okay, we'll get it online. It'll come on. Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, it's very slow though. I'm just not set up for internet. I wasn't expecting this.
Coming, yeah?
Yeah.
Go down on the home page. This is Amartya Sen. The next one is Charles. Oh, sorry, go down. That's right there.
This one? Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I can fix that.
Oh, it was this one from Oslo. Okay. You're right. Well done, Tom. You're so calm. Are we almost ready, or shall I? Have I got a minute to get up? We're ready. Right. Thanks.
They appear in Erican and close association with foreign court.
Right, take that back.
They're both immigrants and foreigners to the Rohingya.
We are endlessly thankful to Tom's technical skills.
I'm not referring to the Rohingya, the theme of today's talks, but to the Achaean Burmese speakers, the Theravada Buddhists, whose culture, religion, ethnicity is foreign to the Arakan region and is predated by the Muslim presence there. Now, having said this, can I step back and argue that I'm not seeking to switch the positions of the Rohingya and the Achaean. I'm suggesting that if we apply the same historical method to the Achaean that I have seen applied to the historicity of the Rohingya by so much of the scholarship on the country in the years since my dissertation, no group in Arakan would pass the test as indigenous. The problem is that the history of Arakan before the 14th century, and arguably to a certain extent before the 15th century, is far murkier than a lot of the scholarship would have you believe. What we know is that there was an Indo-Aryan population speaking a non-Tibeto-Burman language, writing in an Indic script, building temples and practicing religion that was Hindu-Buddhist along North Indian lines, that was part of the larger Bay of Bengal world, which was outside of the Irrawaddy zone of interaction. Then suddenly in the late 14th and early 15th centuries, we had invasions from the Irrawaddy Valley, from the Kingdom of Ava and the Kingdom of Bengal, which at the time were engaged in a massive war with each other. And they enter Arakan and place their own kings and queens on the throne and bring in administrators, soldiers, and settlers from the Irrawaddy Valley. And what was there in Arakan before gets transformed by integration with the Irrawaddy Valley. Burmese language appears, Burmese script predominates, Theravada Buddhism appears as a royal cult at first and this disseminates to the general population. Theravada Buddhist monks arrive, and Irrawaddy Valley material culture probably also had its own impact from this time. But even afterward, this remained one of many influences in Arakan. And in another murky episode, a new line of indigenous kings, the Marapu dynasty, was established in the early 15th century, one that saw itself rooted in the Muslim world, one that adopted the Muslim confession of faith, that used Persian and Muslim titles, that built mosques as well as pagodas. And this court and culture had space for all. It was not so much syncretic and heterodox, its population not so much homogeneous and exclusivist, but inclusive and heterogeneous. One that was not bigoted, but tolerant. We are blinded to the possibilities of such a place because of the impact of the modern nation state. First, it requires conformity to the contemporary national imaginary, not a partial subscription. For example, although Burma is admitted today as having many ethnic groups, these ethnic groups are essentialized. So that the majority is Theravada Buddhist, Burmese-speaking, and Burman, but only in one way. So you can't have different kinds of Theravada Buddhists. Burma-speaking, Burmans, they all have to be of singular type. So whatever is truly Rakhine is being viewed, understood, and turned into Yakhine, losing its regional essence, its independent take on things, and being reworked on an Irrawaddy Valley template, what I have called in the past Irrawaddyization. Now this is one problem of the modern nation state for Rakhine, making things look like the Irrawaddy Burmans. This is not an uncommon problem because it replicates similar developments in other countries around the globe as part of the development of the nation state. Second, the nation state and the expansion of what some have called state space was also accompanied by the eradication of pre-existing governmentalities, and what I would like to call, if you would allow, social mentalities or cultural mentalities. These are approaches to socializing, building local societies and cultures that are in communication with environmental constraints and opportunities, cultural influences, the movements of people, and so on. If we look back into the early days of Rakhine, and I assert that Rakhine pre-existed Theravada Buddhist, Burmese-speaking Burman culture that is appropriated the term today, we again find a people whose culture was directed at inclusion and diversity, the kind necessary to keep a land in a challenging, unforgiving climate populated, and this was very challenging indeed. And a very small population, minute by Irrawaddy Valley standards, was built and maintained by attracting Muslims and Hindus, Buddhists of all varieties and Europeans, giving them space, the court patronizing all of their gods, and developing a court culture that reflected a wide political, cultural, and religious remit. And this entire region, not just the half lying south of the Naf, is Rakhine. This social mentality was eradicated sometime after the Burman conquest in the mid-1780s. What many of those writing about the history of the region in recent years do not tell you is that most of the Burmese language historical sources in Rakhine were written after the Burman conquest. So when something is not found in European or Persian language sources, that is, when it comes from a Burmese language chronicle, it relates Rakhine's state of social mentality sometime after 1785. And we find that with each new chronicle that the coverage of pre-1785 Rakhine makes the latter look more and more like the Irrawaddy Valley Burma in British India. The Rakhine look increasingly like Theravada Buddhists, Burmese-speaking Burmans, are supposed to look what we might call, again, Rakhine rather than Rakhine. And those who look different are portrayed increasingly as troublesome outsiders. The Rohingya go from being fellow villagers to Mohammedans to Bengalis to Bengali marauders. And the presence of the Rakhine culture is wrecked back into the immeasurable depths of the past as if it had always been that way as it stood in the 1780s. It had always been that way for 2,000 years. And it is this effort, the remaking of Rakhine into a nativist Rakhine imaginary, that is behind the recasting that continues today. Archaeological sites, texts, and other sources are being remade or expunged to develop a historical record that emphasizes an unchallenged cultural and religious homogeneity to the region. Arakan is part of a greater Myanmar. This is an imaginary that has erased Arakan's integration into the Myanmar nation state, eased Arakan's integration into the Myanmar nation state, but has simultaneously undermined Arakanese society itself and miscast an area of movement, inclusion, and integration into one of stasis, exclusion, and closure. This is imaginary that claims that the term Rohingya is a post-war invention by Muslim separatists, but in fact it is not. I should stress that when we look at the beginning of this process, at some point, at some of the only reliable documentation from the period, the late 18th century, such as Francis Buchanan's diary and other writings, we find that it says quite clearly, the Mohammedans who have long settled in Arakan call themselves Rohingya or natives of Arakan. There has been a lot of effort to cover this up or reject it, but there is no getting around this. You have a source from that time period whose account was published in a journal from that time, which says that the Muslims of the Burman Empire call themselves Rohingya or natives of Arakan. This is as crystal clear as a historical source can get. 1799, Rohingya was a term used by the Muslims that meant for them the natives of Arakan. There is no genuine controversy over what this term means. What it meant, when it was said, it did not come from the 1940s or the 1950s. It was not an invention of political provocateurs. Any attempt to dismiss this kind of evidence has to be intended to obscure the truth, not reveal it. No good historian would suggest otherwise. By the way, this was something I had found and actually republished in the SOAS Bulletin of Burma Research back in 2003. It has been up online ever since and free to download PDF, and there is no excuse for anyone anywhere legitimately disputing the historicity of Rohingya, depriving an ethnic minority of their own self-reference. The main point is that we've had Rohingya as long as we have had Rakhine, perhaps and certainly longer than we have had the Irrawaddy Valley replicants, the Rakhine. This short presentation has tried to highlight some of the major elements of this change from a religious and culturally heterogeneous immigrant society on the crossroads of Bengal and Burma to one that has been misimagined by some as a sort of Theravada Buddhist, Burman, nativist bastion on the frontiers of the Muslim world. I do stress my point is not to undermine Rakhine Buddhists, but to point to the shared immigrant nature of the entire population of the region. The shared and relative recentness to the emergence of the Rakhine and Rohingya ethnic and religious communalism of today. I would sincerely like to remind them of the true Rakhine past and its inclusive and heterogeneous orientations, and of the historical harmony that existed before the emergence of the modern nation state, a process begun, by the way, with British rule in 1824 and not from 1948. I also wish to highlight the historicity, of course, of the term Rohingya, as legitimate and older than the Rakhine identity proffered today by those who would seek to undermine a region's unique culture and history. Thank you for letting me present the time.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Mongzani. And could I just say, could people try and refrain from leaving and entering the room as much as they are doing? I know we're going to have a break after this session, but it is a little bit disruptive, I think, for those in the back. Zani, you're going to talk about the persecution of both the Rohingya and the Kachin from the military perspective, which I think is an extremely important perspective. So you've got 10 minutes and then we'll break. Thank you. I'll control you.
That's a good idea. I would be discussing the role of the military because it is the main perpetrator, despite the fact that there are non-state actors who have, in many forms, and collaborated with the military in the persecution of both communities or groups. But although my comments are going to be on the military's role, and they're not going to be restricted or confined to just the two groups, because the military's persecution extends well beyond these two ethnic and religious communities. In two quotes, the military's attitude towards particularly Kachin and Rohingya can be summarized. When President Thein Sein at the time, this was back in 2012 when he was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. He first made his appearance at the United Nations General Assembly, and there were a couple of in-service generals with him in New York. A friend of mine was in the room, and he was not one of the generals, but ex-military officer. And he described to me the conversation that they had. And on the Kachin, the Burmese general's view is that you need to understand the tropics to understand this metaphor. The Kachin resistance is a mosquito in the mosquito net. They can be eliminated at any time that is strategically convenient to the military. Of course, statistically speaking, the positional war cannot be fought by the Kachin and retain their resistance positions. That has been, the case with, the Kachin losing different strategic positions. So this is how the military view one of the founding ethnic communities of Burma, a mosquito in the net. Yeah? And that is shared widely among the top brass. With respect to Rohingya, the Rohingyas are considered or have been framed since 1978 as a threat to existential threat to national security, both culturally and demographically, because of the 17 or 16 different Muslim communities that are scattered across the country. Only the Rohingya are immediately adjacent to one of the most populous Muslim countries, named Bangladesh. And that is also the country where they have cultural and historical ties. And in fact, it is not just the Rohingyas that have ties with Bangladesh. Rakhine Buddhists themselves have ties with that country in the pre-nation state period. So the difference between the military's attitudes towards the Kachin and the Rohingya, the Burmese do not have intention to eliminate the Kachins. The Burmese want to, in quotes, pacify, in the old colonial language, and subjugate and make the Kachins take the slots that the Burmese military deem suitable for them. Yeah? In contrast, with respect to the Rohingya, because it is deemed completely as a threat to national security, they are there for elimination. Although the Holocaust-style, final solution is no longer conceivable. That is why it's straight from the mouth of an ex-brigadier general, a close friend of mine, who was posted in Rakhine State, described to me face to face. It's like, white racists, when white racists meet, or like they assume that the other person shares that racist ideology. So because I'm Burman and Buddhist, so this brigadier general calls me little brother and said, you know what, there are too many, we can't kill them all. They are too many, we cannot kill them all. So they devised various strategies, to destroy the Rohingya from the foundations of life. And so I won't go into the genocidal language and all that. So these two imageries sum up how the Burmese military approach this issue. And in one issue, or one typical issue that often comes up when people discuss, scholars, journalists, whoever, Burmese military is opaqueness, secrecy, secretive nature of this organization. But for someone like myself, I'll go into it just for 30 seconds, whose families over 3 generations have served in this institution, the military is legible, very legible. And because they are legible, I have been screaming foul because I know what is next, what is their next move, including the narrative of democratization. I was a fool 5 years ago saying, this is sham. This is not what it appears to be. This is not Mandela moment for the Burmese. But that was the dominant discourse. How do I know this institution and its strategies that may not be transparent to the other eyes? I was myself admitted to military officer training school at the age of 16. Were it not for my father, I would be with this murderous regime, and my contemporaries are in the essentially waiting in the wings to take over the reins of the military, not government, the military. Government is not important. It is the military that is in the driver's seat. It will remain so until there are radical events, change the power equation. And then secondly, I operate in these like twilight areas. I am neither Burmese nor minorities, or ethnic nationality. Because my uncles on both sides of my parents taught me how to handle firearm theoretically at home, when they're at home, coming from, the, in quotes, front lines. That means like battlefields and, war zones where the army was supposedly fighting a just and defensive war. But we never asked, as Burmese public, why are the Burmese military in the regions that are ancestrally belonging to other communities? We look at them as peripheral buffer zones. See, this takes us to what Mandy was saying earlier, militarism. War is the best soil where militarism thrives. It is the best fertilizer. Conflicts and wars. Generals love nothing more than conflicts within society, conflicts within communities, ethnic or religious or class. And they prey on these conflicts. That is why, upon independence in 1948, we had only 2 major ethnic resistance or revolt. The very day the Burma celebrated independence and Union Jack coming down on the 4th of January 1948 in the wee hours, Burma Army was fighting in Rakhine State. And that relates to Rohingya. Burma Army was confronted with what they consider two distinct enemies. One from the then separatist Mujahideens who wanted to be with then East Pakistan, not with the predominantly Buddhist Burma. And then you've got Rakhine nationalists who felt they had been shortchanged by the Burmese nationalists because the British made a deal with the Burmese Buddhist nationalists, left out Mon Buddhist and Rakhine Buddhist nationalists. That was when that transfer of independence once again disrupted the equilibrium of ethnic relations that had begun to crystallize over 120 years of British colonial rule. And the second point is, we said Second World War never ended in Burma, literally. Within 90 days of independence, Burma was thrusted back into the war, and literally with the leftover weapons, stockpiles, left over by the surrendered Japanese troops, Allied forces of British and Americans. Yeah? So we have not been out of war, out of Second World War. It never ended. The world may be moving into the Third World War. For us, it's just transition to the next big war. Yeah? And finally, what are the strategies that the Burmese military uses? Well, I think they inherited racist and racialized colonial state. Colonialism was not just simply economic exploitation. It was a typical apartheid racist state and structure. And oil in Burmese days had this expression. British Empire was essentially run by civilian administrators with the protection or behind the protection of 1 million bayonets. And there was an expression that he used, and that is precisely the nature of the Burmese state. It is a with the exception of about 10 years in the transition period from British colonial rule to nationalist Burman control civilian democratic parliamentary era. The last 50+ years, the Burmese military has reshaped and rewrote history, reshaped social, class, and ethnic relations that would support their racialized, racist ideology. When you have finally militarist regime, institutionalized militarism as the ruling ideology, they are the ones who reap the benefit of control over population, control over land, control over resources. The border regions of Burma, where non-Burmese ethnic communities are ancestrally scattered, with very fluid ethnic identities, mixed identities, the Burmese military came up with the blood-based, purified notion of ethnic identity. So our history that is completely reworked radically by the Burmese military reads ethnicity and races into the past. And then finally, that is racialized, militarized, economically predatory military state, that is at the root of today's conflicts, and I do not see how problems can be addressed without confronting this elephant in the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon.